You can call me Meyer. That was the promise from Hermann Göring, head of the all-powerful German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. He guaranteed that no enemy bomber would ever reach the heart of Germany. By 1943, it seemed he was right. You are 25,000 feet above the earth inside a B-17 flying fortress. The air is thin and freezing. The temperature outside is minus 60 degrees. Your oxygen mask feels like a block of ice clamped to your face. Below you lies the German Reich, an industrial fortress churning out weapons for a war it is winning. Your mission is to stop it. But first, you have to survive the next few hours. They call them Expert 10, the German fighter aces, men with 50, 100, sometimes over 200 kills, painted on the tails of their Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. They were the masters of this sky. Or they would watch your bomber formations approach from miles away, calculating the perfect angle of attack. Then they would dive, straight through your defensive machine gun fire. Their 20-millimeter cannons didn't just punch holes, they exploded your aircraft. On a single mission to a ball-bearing factory in Schweinfurt, 60 American bombers were torn from the sky. 60, that's 600 men, gone in an afternoon. The 8th Air Force was bleeding out. The daylight bombing campaign, the core of Allied strategy, was on the verge of total collapse. And here's the part that made it a slaughter. Your escorts, your little friends, they couldn't go all the way. The powerful P-47 Thunderbolts. The twin-engined P-38 Lightnings. They had the muscle, but not the legs. They carried enough fuel to get you part of the way into Germany. But then, you'd hear the dreaded call over the radio. The fighters were turning back, leaving you alone, defenseless. You were flying into the heart of the hornet's nest with no protection at all. The Americans were desperate. They needed a long-range fighter, a guardian angel that could go all the way to Berlin and back. They searched everywhere, and what they found was a failure. A plane so disappointing the British, who had originally commissioned it, tried to send it back. A design the U.S. Army Air Forces themselves had rejected for high-altitude combat. It was called the P-51 Mustang, and its engine was so weak it was practically useless above 15,000 feet. So how did this unwanted, underpowered reject become the weapon that broke the back of the Luftwaffe? Imagine you are 20 years old. You are sealed inside an aluminum tube 5 miles above enemy soil. The year is 1943. The cold is a physical presence. It's 50 degrees below zero, and it seeps through the fleece of your jacket, through your boots, into your very bones. You are a gunner in a B-17 flying fortress, and your fighter escort has just turned for home. You watch them go. The P-47 Thunderbolts, powerful but thirsty, peel away over Aachen. The P-38 Lightnings, with their distinctive twin booms, bank steeply and head back toward England. They have reached the limit of their fuel. Their job is done. But yours has just begun. For the next 3 hours, over hundreds of miles of hostile territory, you are completely on your own. And they are waiting for you. Down below, the wolves gather, not in small packs, but in a swarm. And they are the Luftwaffe's Jagdgeschwader, the fighter wings, men like Egon Mayer and Georg Peter Eder. They are not kids. They are hardened veterans of a dozen aerial campaigns, and they are defending their homes. They don't attack from behind, like in the movies. They come at you head-on. 100 fighters flying in perfect formation, a tactic they call the company front. A wall of roaring engines and winking lights. Those lights are 20 and 30 millimeter cannons. Each shell is the size of a milk bottle, filled with high explosives. One hit can tear the wing off your bomber. This was the brutal mathematics of the air war. The Americans had the bombers. The Germans had the home field advantage. The sky over the Reich became a meat grinder. The numbers are hard to comprehend. On August 17, 1943, but the 8th Air Force launched a dual-pronged attack against Schweinfurt and Regensburg. 60 heavy bombers were lost. That is 600 men killed or captured in a single afternoon. The survivors who limped back to England told stories of horror, of planes exploding in a flash of orange, of parachutes that never opened, of friends they'd had breakfast with that morning, simply vanishing from the sky. And here's the part that history often forgets. The Germans were winning. The American daylight bombing campaign was on the verge of total collapse. The losses were unsustainable. The strategy was failing. In October, they tried again, a second raid on Schweinfurt. This time, it was worse. 60 more B-17 shot down. Another 13 damaged beyond repair. That single day became known as Black Thursday. But the American bomber crews had a 1 in 4 chance of completing their 25-mission tour. Think about those odds. You would have a better chance of surviving Russian roulette. Hermann Göring, the chief of the Luftwaffe, was jubilant. He had promised the German people that no enemy plane would ever bomb Berlin. And for months, he was right. The American offensive was halted. The grinder had done its job. Back in the United States, the generals were desperate. They needed a solution. They needed an escort fighter that could go all the way to Berlin and back. A long-legged guardian angel. They had a candidate, a sleek, beautiful aircraft from North American aviation, the P-51. But it had a fatal flaw, a deep, unfixable problem. Its American-made Allison engine was asthmatic at high altitude. Above 15,000 feet, it lost power. It choked. It was useless in the thin, cold air where the bombers flew. The project was considered a failure, a dead end. The Americans were losing the air war. Their bomber crews were being slaughtered. Their grand strategy was in ruins. And their only long-range hope was a fighter plane with the wrong engine. A plane that couldn't fly high enough to do the one job that desperately needed doing. So how could this rejected design, a plane nobody wanted, possibly become the weapon that would break the back of the Third Reich? Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, had made a promise, a boast. He famously declared that if a single enemy bomber reached the heart of the Reich, his name was not Hermann Göring. You could call him Meyer. On March 4, 1944, he must have been looking for a new name, because the bombers arrived over Berlin, and they brought friends. Imagine you are a German pilot, an ace with dozens of kills, scrambling into your Messerschmitt Bf-109. You climb through the clouds, eyes scanning for the lumbering B-17S. The fat cows, you call them. Easy prey this deep inside Germany. Their fighter escorts, the Spitfires and P-47s, should have turned back hours ago, their fuel tanks running on fumes over central Germany. The sky over Berlin is yours. But then you see it. A glint of silver, then another, and another. They are sleek, shark-like. And they are not turning back. They are P-51 Mustangs, and they are circling over the capital of the Third Reich. The feeling in your gut is not fear, not yet. It is confusion, a cold, creeping impossibility. They are not supposed to be here. How? The answer was simple. Deceptively simple. It was a piece of plumbing. 2 streamlined drop tanks, one tucked under each wing. Each held up to 110 gallons of extra fuel. When empty, you just drop them. This simple addition stretched the Mustang's range to a staggering 1,650 miles, London to Berlin and back again, with time to fight. The German High Command knew about the P-51. They had seen its performance data. A good plane, yes, fast, agile, but they had filed it away with all the others. Another short-range annoyance. But they completely missed the one detail that would change the entire war. Here's the part nobody talks about. The arrival of the long-range Mustang didn't just change the odds. It changed the entire mission. General Jimmy Doolittle, commander of the 8th Air Force, issued a new directive in early 1944. It was a death sentence for the Luftwaffe. Before, American fighters flew in tight formation with the bombers. Their only job was defense. Protect the heavies. Doolittle's new order read, "Fighters are to hunt and destroy enemy fighters." Think about what that means. The leash was cut. The Mustang pilots were no longer bodyguards. They were assassins. They were now free to roam ahead of the bomber stream, to seek out German airfields, and to attack the Luftwaffe before it could even form up. The hunters had become the hunted. Or in their own backyard. The German aces were the best in the world at high-altitude interception. They had perfected the art of the diving attack on heavy bombers. But now they had to fight their way through swarms of these silver sharks just to get a shot. And the Mustangs were waiting for them. The attrition was brutal. For every American pilot lost, 5 more were waiting back in England, fresh from training. For every P-51 shot down, American factories were rolling out another 500 that same month. Germany had the better pilots, man for man. But they were running out of men. They were running out of fuel. They were running out of time. The sky bled Luftwaffe pilots. Young men, some with only 160 hours of flight time, were thrown against American veterans with over 500. It wasn't a battle. It was a mathematical slaughter. Oh, the silver flash of a Mustang became a symbol of Germany's doom. But the deepest, darkest irony of the P-51 Mustang was not its range or its guns. It was its heart. The engine that gave it such power and endurance, the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin, was a British design. But the specific model that perfected the Mustang, the Packard Phi 1650, was built under license in America. The very weapon that shattered the myth of German air superiority was a testament to something the Third Reich could never achieve: the combined industrial might of its enemies. Hermann Göring made a promise. He looked the German people in the eye and swore no enemy bomber would ever reach Berlin. By March 1944, Luftwaffe pilots believed him. Imagine you are one of them. Oberleutnant Otto Funnekold of Jagdgeschwader 1. You have 131 victories. You are an expert, an ace. You know the American playbook. The bombers come. You wait for their fighter escorts, the P-47 Thunderbolts, to reach the limit of their fuel and turn for home. Then you strike. It is a deadly, predictable science. On the morning of March 6th, the sirens wail. Another formation is inbound. You climb into your Focke-Wulf 19. Oh, the taste of coffee still on your tongue. You climb into the cold, thin air. There they are, specks on the horizon, hundreds of B-17 lumbering towards the heart of the Reich. And there are their little friends. Just as expected. You wait, you watch your map. They should be turning back now, any second. But they don't, they keep coming. And here is where the world changes. High above the bomber stream, you see them. gleaming silver predators catching the sun. They are sleek, they are fast, they are P-51 Mustangs. Over Berlin. It was impossible. A ghost story pilots told to scare rookies. Yet here they were. Now, put yourself in the belly of a B-17. You are Sergeant Ray Hughes, a 19-year-old waist gunner. It is 45 degrees below zero. Your oxygen mask feels frozen to your face. The flak outside is a storm of black puffs, each one a potential death sentence. You have flown a dozen missions. You have seen planes to your left and right simply disappear, vaporized. The worst part of every mission is the moment your escorts peel away, a waggling their wings goodbye. It is the loneliest feeling in the world. But today is different. You look out your window, past the .50 caliber machine gun, and you see a Mustang. It is still there. Its pilot gives you a slight wave. He is staying. All the way to the target. All the way home. For the first time in 1,000 miles, you can breathe. The sky over Berlin becomes a chaotic, swirling melee. The Germans, shocked, are forced to fight through a wall of American fighters just to get a shot at the bombers. The P-51s don't just defend, they hunt. Don Blakesley's 4th Fighter Group dives, scything through the German formations. They are not just bodyguards, they are assassins. The German aces fought with courage, with desperation. But they were fighting a new kind of war. The myth of the untouchable Reich was shattered in a single afternoon. That day, the Americans lost 69 bombers and 11 fighters. A staggering 800 men. But the Luftwaffe lost something more precious than its 80 downed aircraft. They lost the sky itself. Adolf Galland, general of the fighter arm, heard the news and knew the end was near. But for the men in the cockpits, the war had just become terrifyingly personal. One of them, a young American pilot from Ohio, now flew alone. He had watched his wingman's plane disintegrate into a cloud of fire and metal. His fuel gauge was flirting with empty, hundreds of miles from home. And his radio was silent. The war ends, and for the first time in years, the skies over Europe fall silent. No contrails etching lines of battle, no distant drone of 1,000 engines. Just quiet. You have to wonder what that silence felt like. For the pilots who went home, the war was over. For the German aces, the so-called gods of the sky, they were now just men on the ground. Men surrounded by the ruins their leaders had created. Adolf Galland, the Luftwaffe's general of fighters, admitted it himself. "When I saw Mustangs over Berlin," he said, "I knew the jig was up." Think about what that means. Not the tanks crossing the Rhine, not the armies at the gates. It was a single type of airplane, a silver shark in the stratosphere, that signaled the absolute end of an empire. The P-51 was a liberator. It saved the lives of tens of thousands of Allied bomber crewmen. It broke the back of a murderous regime. This is the story we tell, and it is true. But here is the part nobody likes to talk about. By clearing the sky of fighters, the Mustang gave the bombers a free hand, unchallenged. It was the key that unlocked a new and terrible kind of destruction from the air, visited upon cities like Dresden and Hamburg. A single machine held two opposing truths in its aluminum skin. It was a shield for the bombers and a sword against the fighters, a savior and an enabler. After 1945, most of these perfect predators were declared surplus. Thousands were sold for as little as $1,500. Others were simply melted down for scrap. Their job was done. The young men who flew them returned to farms and factories, their youth spent at 30,000 feet. trying to forget the things they had seen, but the idea of the Mustang that never went away. The concept of the long-range escort, the ability to project air power anywhere on the globe, that discovery redrew the map of the Cold War and defined the very meaning of a superpower. We look back at the P-51 as a hero's machine, a beautiful, deadly piece of engineering that helped win a necessary war. It represents a victory of ingenuity against tyranny, but it also forces you to ask a difficult question. When we build a tool that so perfectly masters the art of destruction, can it ever truly be put back in its box? Or does the tool itself change the nature of the hand that wields it forever?